The sun had barely risen over the city of Abadan when 10-year-old Amara stepped off the old commercial bus with her small bag clutched tightly in her arms. Her eyes scanned the neighborhood as she walked the last few meters toward the tall black gates of Alim Royal Academy. To others, it looked like a gate, but to Amara, it looked like a mountain. The gates were clean, shiny, and decorated with gold trimmings. A giant sign above read, Alim Royal Academy raising kings and queens. Amara wasn't sure she felt like either. Her faded gown fluttered in the breeze. The sandals on her feet were worn, with cracks on the sole and dust settled between her toes. Her braids were tight, but already fuzzy at the edges. Mama had done them 2 weeks ago. That was the same week Mama got sick. And the same week she never came home. Amara stood at the gate and breathed deeply. She had only one instruction. When you reach there, tell them your name. God will take care of the rest. So she did. She stepped forward. But just as she reached for the intercom, a loud voice rang out from behind the open gate. Hey! Hey! Stop right there. The person stepped out quickly. It was a woman in a bright yellow apron, holding a mop and a silver bucket in one hand. Her name tag read, Cordelia. Where do you think you're going, N? The woman shouted, squinting at Amara's outfit. Amara froze. I'm here for school, she replied softly. Cordelia laughed, the type of laugh that wasn't funny at all. She tilted her head and walked closer to Amara, scanning her from head to toe. For this school? She asked again, her tone full of mockery. You think Alim Royal is a community school? I was admitted. I got the paper at home, Amara said, trying to reach into her bag. Cordelia snatched the bag before Amara could unzip it. Even your bag is crying, she hissed, turning to the other staff nearby. Come and see what poverty looks like. Look at the dust on her feet. You think you'll enter here like this? A few students walking in began to slow down. Some laughed quietly. Others just stared. Amara tried again. My mother, she said this is the school. She applied before she. Cordelia raised her hand. Don't come here with long stories, I beg. Pack your things and go back to where you came from. Amara's lips trembled. Please. I didn't do anything wrong. That sentence, I didn't do anything wrong, made something snap in Cordelia. You think I'm stupid? She yelled. You want to dirty this clean compound with your dust? Look at your hair. Look at your slippers. She turned, picked up the bucket of mop water, and without warning poured it directly onto Amara's face. A loud gasp rose from the students standing nearby. The water splashed across Amara's cheeks, soaked her dress, and trickled down her small arms. She coughed, blinked quickly, then wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her soaked dress. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there, silent and shivering. Cordelia stood tall, proud of her action. She smiled, folding her arms like she had done something righteous. Let that teach you a lesson, she muttered. That's when a deeper voice spoke. Is that how you treat strangers? Cordelia turned around sharply. So did Amara. It was the security guard, a man named Mr. Jaja, standing tall in his green uniform with a radio clipped to his chest. Everyone in the school knew him. He had worked at Alim Royal for over 15 years. He wasn't the type to talk much, but when he did, people listened. Cordelia forced a smile. Jaja. Good morning, oh. I was just... He ignored her and walked toward Amara. He bent slightly and gently touched her shoulder. Are you okay, my daughter? Amara looked up into his eyes. They were kind. She nodded. Mr. Jaja turned his gaze toward Cordelia, who now looked uncomfortable. Do you know her? He asked calmly. Cordelia frowned. She's nobody. Just some stray child from the road. Mr. Jaja stood upright and looked at her firmly. She's not nobody. Her name is Amara Chioma Ugwu. Her mother was my friend, and she belongs here more than you ever will. Cordelia blinked. Wait, how do you know her name? She stammered. Mr. Jaja didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his walkie-talkie and pressed a button. Base, come in. Message for Director Onum. The girl is here. Over. Cordelia's face drained of color. Director Onum? Everyone at Aleem Royal knew her. She was the woman who bought the school last year, the one whose name was whispered in staff rooms and board meetings. And now Mr. Jaja was calling her? The gates slowly opened. A black Prado Jeep with tinted windows pulled into the compound and stopped right at the entrance. Cordelia took a step back. The other students stood frozen. The car door opened, and a tall woman in a white trouser suit stepped out. Her heels clicked against the concrete as she walked with urgency. "Amara," she called. Amara's lips parted. "Andi Anum?" The woman hurried over, knelt, and held Amara's face with both hands. "Oh, my baby, look at what they did to you." She looked up and straight at Cordelia. "Who poured water on her?" No one answered. Mrs. Onum's voice rose slightly.
"Who poured
water?" Cordelia tried to step forward, trembling now. "Madam, please, I didn't know." She didn't look. Mrs. Onum cut her off. "You poured water on the child of the woman who started this school with me. Her mother taught in this same school for 10 years before she passed. You didn't even ask her name." Cordelia began to cry. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." But Mrs. Onum was already turning to Mr. Jaja. "Jaja," she said calmly, "this child carries her mother's legacy now. Please do the honors." Mr. Jaja nodded. He stood tall, placed his right palm on his forehead, and saluted Amara. Every student standing there went silent. The ones who had laughed before now lowered their heads. Cordelia dropped to her knees. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Amara looked at her, her face still wet, her dress still soaked, but her voice didn't shake. "I forgive you," she said softly. "But please don't do that to another child again." The whole compound of Aleem Royal Academy had gone silent. For years, it had been a place of polished shoes, imported lunchboxes, and ironed uniforms. But this morning, this one strange morning, the school saw something it had never seen before. The security guard saluted a child in soaked clothes. Not because of fear, not out of pity, but out of honor. Amara stood at the center of it all, small, trembling, unsure of what to do next. Behind her, the cleaner Cordelia remained on her knees, muttering apologies that Amara barely heard. In front of her stood Mrs. Onum, the woman who had once carried her as a toddler and taught beside her mother in the same building now rising behind them. And beside her was the man who shocked them all, Mr. Jaja, the silent but respected gatekeeper who had just given Amara the kind of respect most adults in the school had never received. Mrs. Onum gently pulled Amara into her arms. "Come, let's get you dry." As they walked through the gates, Mr. Jaja followed behind, his chest lifted with quiet pride. The crowd of students parted for them like water, making way for a boat. The ones who had been laughing earlier? They were now silent. The ones who had filmed the scene? Already posting. And the ones who had stared? Now ashamed of their silence. Inside the director's office, Mrs. Onum placed a warm towel around Amara's shoulders and poured her a glass of juice. "You're safe now," she whispered. Amara nodded, but kept her eyes lowered. She didn't want juice. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to feel invisible again, like she had felt since Mama died. That pain was still heavy in her chest, sitting there like a full bucket of water with no handle to carry it. Mrs. Onum sat down across from her. "You're not just any girl, Amara. You're Chioma's daughter. And that means something." Amara looked up. "People don't remember her here." "They do," Mrs. Onum said gently. "But they remember her for the wrong reasons. They called her the teacher who always gave to everyone. The woman who'd sweep the classroom before the cleaners arrived. They called her poor, but they never saw how rich her heart was." Amara's lip quivered. "Mama used to say we're richer than most people, even without money." Mrs. Onum smiled. She was right. That was when Mr. Jaja knocked gently on the door. "Come in," Mrs. Onum said. He entered, carrying a sealed envelope. "She needs this," he said. Amara took it, slowly opening it with small fingers. Inside was a laminated admission letter and a brown folder stamped with the school's golden crest. Her mother's signature was at the bottom, just above Mrs. Onum's. Amara gasped softly. "She applied for me?" Mrs. Onum nodded. Weeks before she died. She sent it from her hospital bed. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. She didn't tell me. She wanted to surprise you, Mrs. Onum said. She wanted you to wear a proper uniform and walk in proud. But she didn't get the chance to tell you before, well, there was silence. Mr. Jaja cleared his throat. She told me though, he said. The last time I saw her, she called me to her bedside. She said, if I don't make it, and Amara shows up at that gate looking like the child of a beggar, protect her until she finds her name again. Mrs. Onum added, and today you found your name, Amara. By noon, the incident had already hit social media. Someone from the student body had filmed the entire scene from Cordelia shouting, to the water splash, to the salute. The caption? Cleaner pours dirty water on poor girl, but turns out she's the school owner's goddaughter eyes crown hashtag respect Amara. It took only 2 hours for the post to reach 20,000 views. Parents started calling the school line nonstop. Teachers were whispering in corners. Some were angry. Others were embarrassed. But all were afraid. Because the girl they had overlooked was now the face of something bigger than herself. A reminder of what pride and quick judgment could cost. Meanwhile, in the staff room, Cordelia sat quietly in the corner, face buried in her hands. Her apron was no longer neat. Her confidence had disappeared. 2 junior teachers sat near her, whispering. She shouldn't have done that, one said. I heard she might get sacked, the other replied. She poured water on a child in front of students. If that video reaches the ministry. Cordelia raised her head slowly. I didn't know, she whispered. She looked poor. One of the teachers sighed. And that's exactly the problem. When the bell rang at 3 p.m., the school gate was already swarming with curious eyes. But this time, nobody was laughing. Amara walked out holding Mrs. Onum's hand. She was wearing a brand new uniform, pressed and gleaming. Her old sandals were gone. On her feet were simple black school shoes. The very ones her mother had wanted to buy before she passed. Mr. Jaja stood by the gate. As they approached, he adjusted his cap. And just like he did that morning, he saluted her again. Amara smiled this time. A soft one. Some students nearby took off their caps too. Others bowed their heads slightly. It wasn't because of her new clothes. It wasn't because she was now known. It was because she didn't scream when she was splashed. She didn't insult when she was mocked. She didn't brag after being revealed. She remained Amara, the girl in dusty sandals who found herself again. That night, Amara sat on her new bed, reading the letter in the brown folder over and over. To Amara, I might not be there on your first day, but you're never alone. The school is yours. Make me proud, Mama. She wiped a tear from her eye, then opened the second letter. It was written in Mrs. Onum's handwriting. Tomorrow, I will address the whole school. You won't have to say a word, but I want everyone to see what strength looks like. Not through wealth, but through grace. Amara laid back on her pillow. Outside, the world was buzzing with her name. Inside, she was still just Mama's daughter. But tomorrow, the world would meet her properly. Morning came slowly. For most students of Aleem Royal Academy, it was just another school day. But for Amara, this morning felt like the beginning of something new. She stood in front of the mirror in the guest room of Mrs. Onum's house, dressed in the same uniform every other child in the school wore, but something felt different. It wasn't the polished black shoes or the neat ribbon tied into her hair. It was the weight of her mother's wish resting gently on her shoulders. It was the quiet fire in her chest that whispered, Today, you walk in with your name. Mrs. Onum drove her to school personally that morning. No school bus. No driver. Just the 2 of them. You ready? The woman asked as they pulled up to the gate. Amara nodded. I'm not afraid anymore. Mrs. Onum smiled. Good. Because today, you won't be invisible. By 7:30 a.m., the entire student body stood lined up under the pavilion. Teachers stood behind them, quiet. There was a strange air in the compound, like everyone was waiting for something. Then Mrs. Onum walked forward with a microphone in hand. Good morning, she began. Good morning, Ma, the students replied. She looked out across the crowd. then at the staff, then back at the small figure standing a few feet behind her, Amara. She took a deep breath. Yesterday, something happened in this school that I never imagined would happen in a place that claims to raise kings and queens. There was silence. A girl walked through our gates, not in perfect shoes, not with perfect clothes, but with the most important thing of all, a name. And we tried to strip it from her. The students listened. Teachers shuffled uncomfortably. This girl was splashed with water. She was mocked, humiliated, and made to feel like she didn't belong. But what none of you knew was that she belonged more than most of us here. Mrs. Onum turned and reached for Amara's hand. Her name is Amara Chioma Agwu. Her mother, Mrs. Chioma, was one of the founding teachers of this school. She died a few weeks ago, and her last wish was that her daughter would continue where she left off. Gasps echoed around the compound. One boy whispered, "She's a founder's child?" Another said, but Cordelia poured water on her. Mrs. Onum raised her voice slightly. "Yes." A staff member splashed her. "And for that, we will not pretend it didn't happen. Because silence is how injustice grows. And Elim Royal will never again be a silent school." She looked over to the right, where Cordelia, the cleaner, stood stiffly beside the admin officer, her apron wrinkled, her hands shaking. "Cordelia," Mrs. Onum called. The woman stepped forward slowly. "Do you have anything to say?" Cordelia's voice cracked. I didn't know." She looked. Her words choked in her throat. She looked poor. "I thought she came to beg." Mrs. Onum nodded slowly. "And now you know. That appearance is not identity. That uniforms don't make royalty. That wealth is not always loud. And dignity does not live in clean shoes." Then she said something no one expected. "As of today, Cordelia is relieved of her duties. This school has no space for cruelty." A sharp gasp ran through the crowd. Cordelia dropped her head. She didn't fight it. She just turned quietly and began to walk away. But before she reached the back gate, Amara stepped forward. "Wait," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd turned. Cordelia turned. Amara looked her straight in the eyes. "I forgive you." Silence. "But I hope the next time you see someone like me, you ask for their name before you pour your bucket." Cordelia's lip trembled. She nodded, then walked away. The entire schoolyard stood still. Even the wind felt like it paused. Mrs. Onum held Amara's shoulder, then whispered to Mr. Jaja, "It's time." The security guard stepped forward in his uniform, cap properly adjusted. He looked at Amara, eyes full of respect, and once again saluted her. This time, he was not alone. One teacher, then another. One student, then two, until a wave of hands touched foreheads in salute, not just to honor Amara, but to honor the lesson she had taught them all. By lunch break, the video from that morning's assembly was all over social media. #RespectAmara started trending again. People began sharing stories of times they had been judged too quickly, dismissed for their looks, or laughed at for things they couldn't control. Radio stations picked it up. One station in Abuja played a soundbite of the salute and asked listeners to call in with their own Amara moments. The responses poured in. "My boss once mocked me for being barefoot during orientation. Today I own my own firm. I was told I didn't look like someone who belonged in med school. Now I'm a practicing surgeon. My daughter was bullied for wearing thrifted clothes. Thank you, Amara, for standing up with grace." Over the next few days, changes began happening. The scholarship board was expanded. Mrs. Onum introduced a new policy. 10% of all admissions must come from underprivileged backgrounds, not as charity, but as strategy. Staff were retrained. A 3-day intensive sensitivity training was rolled out. Staff were warned disrespect, discrimination, or mockery would no longer be tolerated, regardless of rank. A plaque was installed. Right beside the gate where Cordelia splashed Amara, a small gold plaque was placed. It read, "You never know who someone really is until it's too late to treat them right. In honor of Amara Chioma Agwu." The students who mocked Amara, especially those who laughed or filmed her crying, were given one-on-one sessions with the school counselor. Some were suspended. One student, Emeka, was removed as class prefect after the viral video showed him mocking her. When asked if she wanted him punished, Amara said,
No.
"I just want him to never do that to anyone else." Emeka later approached her privately. With his head down, he said, "I'm sorry, Amara.
I
didn't know you were somebody." She replied calmly, "Everybody is somebody." A few weeks later, the school held a parents' appreciation event. Amara stood on stage in front of over 300 guests. Her eyes searched the crowd. She didn't see her mother, but she didn't cry. She held her speech tightly and said, "My name is Amara. I'm here because someone believed in me. I lost my mother, but I found her strength inside me. So, if you ever meet a child like me again, dusty shoes, old bag, quiet voice, remember, they might carry a name that changes the world, just like mine did." The crowd gave a standing ovation. Mrs. Onom clapped with pride. Mr. Jaja saluted once more. And in the sky above, it felt like Amara's mother was smiling down at her. The end. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share for more interesting stories.